I bought my secluded property because it sat at the edge of a quiet valley, connected to the main road by an old wooden bridge I restored myself. For years, life drifted along calmly, and even when construction began on the luxury neighborhood called Silver Ridge Estates, I assumed they would keep to themselves. The HOA that followed soon proved otherwise, building gates, posting signs, and acting as if the entire valley fell under their authority. I tried ignoring their behavior, but their sense of entitlement grew bolder with every passing week. One morning, as I stepped outside with coffee in hand, the roar of machinery shattered the quiet. Excavators crouched beside my creek, and splintered pieces of my bridge were scattered through the water. A group of HOA board members watched proudly from the bank as if destroying someone else's property was admirable. Their president, Marla, stood at the front wearing a smile filled with smug satisfaction. I demanded an explanation, but she simply handed me a printed notice claiming my bridge violated their environmental guidelines. I reminded her I was not part of their HOA and my property existed long before their subdivision appeared. She waved that aside and insisted they were standardizing the area for the good of everyone. It was clear they believed their authority reached beyond their borders, and demolishing my bridge was their attempt to demonstrate control. What they didn't know was that the only road leading into their neighborhood crossed my land and depended on the easement established by my bridge. Without the bridge, the easement dissolved, and without the easement, their road vanished. They had unknowingly severed their own access, and all I had to do was wait for them to realize the consequences. They truly believed nothing could challenge their decisions, unaware that their bold interference had triggered a legal chain they could not control. Marla and the board didn't realize anything was wrong at first. They strutted away from the creek as if they had conquered some great threat, confident their authority extended over every inch of the valley. I returned to my house, calm and deliberate, because I knew the clock had already started ticking. Their neighborhood depended entirely on that single-access road running across my land, but the easement for that road existed only because the bridge provided continuous access. With the bridge gone, the legal requirement of maintained passage was broken, nullifying the agreement automatically. All I had to do was notify the county, and the rest would unfold on its own. By noon, the first cracks in their confidence appeared. Delivery trucks turned around at the dead end, unable to reach the gated entrance because the temporary barriers I installed made it clear the road was no longer public access. A few residents came down to question me, but all I said was that the easement had been voided and the road was now private property again. Confusion turned into irritation, and irritation into panic as they realized they were stranded inside their own neighborhood. Marla marched back with her board members, demanding I reopen the road. She insisted I had no right to close anything, but I presented the original deed, the easement contract, and a county letter confirming the bridge's destruction terminated their legal access. Marla's expression twisted with disbelief, then anger, as if paperwork itself betrayed her. She accused me of manipulating the situation, yet the reality was simple: they destroyed the structure that legally guaranteed their only road. Their voices grew louder, their frustration sharper, but I remained steady. The more they pushed, the clearer it became they had no idea how deeply they had trapped themselves. The bridge they tore down wasn't just wood and nails, it was the very thing keeping their neighborhood connected to the world beyond there. The next morning arrived with a parade of problems for Silver Ridge Estates. Cars lined up at the end of the newly closed road, residents honking in frustration as they realized they couldn't leave for work, school, or appointments. The county had already sent out a notice confirming that until a new legally approved access point existed, the road crossing my land was officially restricted to the property owner, me. I watched from my porch as people argued, some demanding answers from their HOA, others demanding an explanation from the universe itself. Marla showed up again, her confidence noticeably thinner than before. She claimed the HOA would simply build a new access road through the opposite side of the valley. I almost laughed. That side bordered protected wetlands, and any construction would require years of environmental studies, permits, and public hearings. She knew it too, but pride wouldn't let her admit they were cornered. A group of residents approached me separately, desperate and surprisingly polite. They asked if there was any temporary way for them to pass while the HOA resolved things. I told them I wasn't unreasonable, but the road had become a liability without a proper agreement in place. Before they could respond, Marla barged in, interrupting with accusations that I was extorting the community. Her hostility made the residents turn their frustration toward her instead. By afternoon, the neighborhood's internal tensions boiled over. People demanded an emergency HOA meeting. Rumors spread that several board members wanted to resign, unwilling to take responsibility for the reckless demolition. Delivery trucks, service providers, and even a moving company trying to pick up a family's belongings were all stalled. The entire neighborhood was immobilized, dependent on a bridge they had chosen to destroy without inquiry or permission. As evening approached, I received an email from a lawyer representing a faction of the residents, not the HOA RE. The lawyer representing the concerned residents arrived at my property the next morning, a calm and professional contrast to the chaos unfolding in Silver Ridge Estates. His name was Daniel, and unlike the HOA board, he had actually reviewed the documents before speaking. He apologized on behalf of the residents for the bridge demolition and explained that many homeowners had no idea what the board had done. According to him, several families were now unable to get medical supplies, groceries, or even reach their jobs. Their frustration had reached a breaking point. I invited him inside to talk. Daniel acknowledged that I had every legal right to restrict access and made it clear the residents wanted to negotiate directly, separate from the HOA. This was an important distinction. It meant the community was finally seeing the problem for what it truly was, a board acting recklessly and without consent. Before we could discuss solutions, however, Marla and two board members marched up my driveway, furious that a resident group dared to involve an outside lawyer. They accused me of turning the neighborhood against them, as if their poor decisions weren't already doing that on their own. Daniel calmly reminded them he represented the residents, not me, but Marla didn't want rational explanations, she wanted someone to blame. Their shouting grew so loud a few neighbors gathered at the property line, watching the confrontation unfold. Marla insisted the HOA had full authority to rebuild the bridge themselves, but she had once again overlooked a critical detail: they had no jurisdiction on my land. Any attempt to build on my property without permission would lead to criminal trespassing charges. When I stated this firmly, the crowd murmured, and several residents turned their disappointment toward the board. It was the first time I saw Marla's confidence visibly crack. The consequences of their actions were finally catching up with them, and the neighborhood they clay. The following day, Silver Ridge Estates held its most tense emergency meeting yet. Residents gathered in the Central Park area, voices low, expressions tight with frustration. I wasn't invited, of course, but Daniel asked if I would come as a neutral observer. When I arrived, the crowd parted slightly, and I could feel the mix of anger and exhaustion hanging in the air. Marla stood at the front with the remaining board members, clutching a stack of papers meant to make her look prepared. But the moment she opened the meeting, the residents unleashed weeks' worth of pent-up frustration. They demanded answers about the bridge, the road, the permits, and why the HOA acted without consulting anyone. Families who hadn't been able to leave for work or receive vital deliveries stepped forward one by one, each story chipping away at the board's authority. Marla tried to shift blame toward me, insisting I had overreacted. But that strategy finally backfired. Daniel calmly explained, loud enough for everyone to hear, that my actions were not retaliation but the automatic result of their unlawful demolition. He held up the county's statement confirming the easement's termination. The crowd turned silent for a moment, absorbing the truth. Then the calls for resignation began. Not whispers, full, direct demands from dozens of residents. 2 board members resigned on the spot. Marla refused, insisting she had acted for the good of the community, but no one believed that anymore. Her reign of control had ended the moment she assumed her power extended past her borders. Later, the residents approached me collectively with a respectful proposal. They wanted to fund and rebuild the bridge themselves under proper permits and reinstate a new easement agreement, this time with clear boundaries and protections for both sides. I agreed, under one condition: the HOA would have no part in its management. The vote passed unanimously. As construction crews hired by the residents, not Th.